This is Rare for Under the Table, coming at you with another edition of MLB Observation Hotstove Edition, Week 6 of the offseason of this year's past 2024 season ending and slowly getting into the 2025 season. Start with the small moves. The Mets acquired this Sean Harney for national pool money. Mason McCoy got re-signed by the Padres to a minor league deal. The Orioles outrighted Thaddeus Ward. Adrian Hauser, former Brewers and Mets starting pitcher and reliever, has signed a minor league deal with Texas. Not a big deal, but good organizational depth. Tanner Rainey, the former longtime Nationals reliever, has signed a minor deal with Pittsburgh, and they also announced they re-signed Hunter Stratton. So Pirates could flip both of them at the deadline. Kyle Keller is taking his talents to Japan. Oliver Ortega signed a minor deal with the Mets. The White Sox signed L.J. Jones to a minor league deal. And then Austin Nola signed a minor deal with the Rockies. Well, Jacob Stallings is staying in Colorado, so he'll be the everyday catcher. But Austin Nola, for a short period of time, was the everyday catcher in San Diego. So, being a backup catcher in Colorado is not bad. Angels have signed former Rockies and Cleveland Guardians pitcher Dakota Hudson to a minor league deal. Didn't really work. I didn't meant to say Guardians, former Cardinals and Rockies pitcher. It didn't really work out with Colorado this year, where they gave him a full opportunity to start, bounced up and down, injuries, whatever the case is. The Angels are not like just standing put. They signed Kyle Hendricks and Kikuchi, so they're just like, we need to get pitching, and we need pitching depth, because even when we had Ohtani, if he was healthy to pitch, we didn't have enough pitching. Still don't understand them getting rid of Patrick Sandoval and Griffin Canning, but it is what it is. Marlins have cut Mike Baumann. Husker Yanoa signed a deal with the Twins. Former Cleveland Guardian and Yankee outfielder Esteban Florial's going to the KBO. Spencer Howard and Miguel Yajori are going to Japan. The Blue Jays re-signed Yimi Garcia to a 2-year, $50 million deal. I would consider this a big deal because Yimi Garcia has bounced around between like Los Angeles and Miami and a bunch of other teams. And $50 million is nothing to sniff at over a 2-year deal, but Blue Jays not relevant. Tigers, with all the moves they've been making, they DFA'd Akil Baddoo, a once promising outfielder. There's no room. The Tigers outfield is super, super crowded, especially if they're throwing like Kerry Carpenter out there in the outfield or their utility infielder. A's have a chance to have an MLB players grievance because of the further payroll increase. They signed Luis Severino, but they're not spending a lot of money, and they're moving to a small ballpark until they can get into the other one. So there's a chance there's going to be an issue there. Pirates signed Elvis Alvarado to a minor league deal. Carter Kieboom, former Nationals shortstop prospect, Angels signed him to a minor league deal. Well, Anthony Rendon doesn't stay healthy at third base. Zach Neto, I think that's his name, the starting shortstop of the Angels, is going to be out for the first half of the season. And Luis Rengifo never stays healthy. So if Kieboom is healthy and he has any potential like he did as a Nationals prospect, the Angels would reap the benefits there. Ethan Small and Kiwoy Tang are going to the Giants in a minor league deal. White Sox signed former reliever of the Royals, I think maybe Mariners too, Dan Atalavila to a minor league deal. Maybe he pitches well enough for the White Sox in spring training, makes the team, and they flip him at the deadline. Jonathan Loaiga is re-signing with the Yankees. The often injured starting pitcher, where I think they made him into a reliever recently, is re-signed. So that's just organizational depth for the Yankees there. Wander Suaro, former longtime Nationals reliever, signed a minor deal with Atlanta. Again, he could be useful, he could not be. Texas, the DFA, Resnicy Contreras. Jeff Brigham, the journeyman Twins, Marlins, and Mets combo starter reliever, signed a minor deal with the D-backs. Carlos Navarez went from the Yankees to the Red Sox at a small deal. Grant Wolfram is gone to the Texas Rangers at a minor deal. I don't know why, again, that I did not even write where these people are going on here. Just the quickness of what I'm doing. Mike Vazel signed a minor deal with the Rays. Connor Plinkton, minor deal with the Nationals. Tucker Davidson, the former Royals pitcher, taking his talents to the KBO. And Brian Sammons is going to Japan. And Cody Ponce is also taking his talents to the KBO. Some other news. Jose Javier is the first base coach now for the Cubs. We'll get to more on that. The Mets made a big move out of the many moves that we're going to get to. First one is signing Clay Holmes to a 3-year, $38 million deal. And you're like, the former, 1 or 2-time All-Star Yankees closer who did lose his closer gig this year, but still helped the Yankees to the World Series. That's good. Edwin Diaz hasn't been healthy recently. He's battled inconsistency. That's a good move for a setup man. Well, no, he's going to be a starting pitcher, and the fact is he hasn't started since he was a rookie. So that is just, in my opinion, stupid. I know that you lost Severino to the A's for a lot of money. Manaya's going to make a lot of money. Jose Quintana's out on the market. So you lost a few of your pitchers. So it's really Cody Sengai, Peterson and McGill, Paul Blackburn. It's nothing that exciting. but I wouldn't have signed a guy who hasn't pitched as a starting pitcher since he was a rookie and is a former 1 to 2 time All-Star closer. Like, that's where I don't understand what they're doing there. But hey, they think that when they recently just signed Frankie Montas, an injury-prone guy who's bounced around the league, who's been busted for PEDs, has been inconsistent. Hey, if we turned around Severino and Sean Manaea and Quintana when they came to us at their lows, maybe we could make both Frankie Montas and Clay Holmes really successful pitchers. We'll see what happens there. Dansby Swanson of the Cubs has announced he's had core surgery, so hopefully he'll be better. Orioles have signed 2 players, 2 veterans who've either been All-Stars, Gold Glove winners, or Silver Sluggers. They've signed Tyler O'Neill to a 3-year, $49.5 million deal and Gary Sanchez to an $8.5 million deal. Like, I know they were paying James McCann all this money when they ate the contract with the Mets, but what James McCann provided was solid defense, a good clubhouse presence, and his ability to keep Adley Rutschman fresh when they would DH Adley Rutschman a few times a week. Gary Sanchez is a Silver Slugger catcher. He's an all-star, but he's never been the most healthiest, but also the most capability of being a really good defensive catcher. When he was in Milwaukee this past season, he played more first base or DH than anything else than backing up Contreras. So I get it. They want a good backup, and if O'Hearn or Mountcastle get traded or get hurt, he can just slide into the DH role, but then they still wouldn't have a backup catcher. The Tyler O'Neill move is to hedge their bets because they don't think they're going to re-sign Anthony Santander. He's a 2-ton Gold Glove winner in left field, was miscast as a center fielder in St. Louis, and okay in right field when he played both right field and left field. He had a rebound season with the Red Sox, even though he missed time, because he's always going to be an injury-prone guy because he's a big dude. He plays hard, and he may get hurt a lot. And I would maybe think about moving Colton Cowser to right field, and maybe Tyler O'Neill every day is your left fielder. It all depends on what the Orioles manager wants to do. Brandon Hyde, and I wish the Red Sox would have held on to him because Yoshi guy, he can't stay healthy. He's now DHing, but doesn't have power as a DH, so it's not the best move. And they could have traded Willer Abreu to maybe the White Sox in a trade, but they did not trade him in any trade, so they decided they're going to go with Abreu, Duran, and Yoshida potentially, and Rev Schneider as their outfield. But the Orioles, though, they improved their outfield. Tyler O'Neill will instantly make their outfield defense better and their lineup better, so will Gary Sanchez. The Dodgers have picked up Michael Conforto on a 1-year, $7 million deal. They know that they're not going to re-sign Teoscar Hernandez, and they already said that Mookie Betts is moving back to the infield. More on that later. So they're thinking to themselves, well, between Pages and James Outman as potential outfielders, when you throw Kiki and Chris Taylor and Edmund sometimes in the outfield, hey, 3 utility infielders and 2 young outfielders is what our outfield is. Well, Michael Conforto, when he's healthy, he's a pretty productive offensive player. And they also re-signed Blake Trinan to a 2-year, $22 million deal. They said it's like the most for a man in his late 30s, 38, 39, since Mariano Rivera. But he was very effective for them last year, helped them win a World Series. And he's a former closer both in Washington and Oakland, so that makes sense. Alex Cobb is going to Detroit. That makes sense. It's not going to be like the Jack Flaherty thing where he was a very hot commodity at the deadline and, the Tigers still went to the playoffs. But Alex Cobb, he didn't really pitch for San Francisco this year. He hasn't been the most healthiest, but he was very clutch for Cleveland in the second half of the season when he was healthy and in the playoffs. So the Tigers are thinking, yeah, we get a veteran guy. If we regress and don't make the playoffs, we could trade him. Phillies have picked up Jordan Romano on a 1-year, $8.5 million deal. That's a good move between Estevez being a free agent and I think either Hoffman or Strahm, who are not really closers. They're former starting pitchers being relievers who had a great season, and them trading Dominguez at the deadline. That they need a closer, and I know he had an off year, Romano, and he's been hurt, but he's been a multiple-time All-Star and a very good closer, so the Phillies have always had an issue with their bullpen. And then Jace Young had wrist surgery, which is what's new. His promising career has not gone the way it's wanted, with major long-term injuries taking up chunks of the season. Mike Tauchman is joining the recent White Sox trend of signing guys who aren't that helpful to a bad team, like Austin Slater, Cal Mitchell, and Nick Maton. So Tauchman is the guy who can play any outfield spot, play good defense. He can be a pinch runner. He can pinch hit for you in the clutch. He had a very good season with the Cubs when Bellinger and Seiya Suzuki missed time. But the White Sox are not going anywhere, so he'd be more effective on a better team. Speaking of the White Sox, they announced that Joe McKeithen, the former Reds hitting coach, who obviously wasn't going to be on Terry Francona's staff, is the new assistant hitting coach after Ryan Fuller said he was going to announce it. So at least the White Sox have a new assistant hitting coach and a new bench coach. But pretty much everything else is still the same, which is stupid. And bad news, though, Ryan Sandberg announced his cancer is back and is spreading to other organs, so prayers up to Ryan Sandberg. He just had the whole statue tribute at Wrigley this year. Apparently, Robinson Cano's suspension is over, and the Mets still owing him $4.5 million, and he's technically on the roster. I don't know if that's true, but it's one of these like baseball posts that someone posted, and I'm like, I find it interesting that his official suspension is over and he's still being paid. It makes sense. Tyro Estrada, the former Yankee and Giants utility player, who the Giants were so in love with, like, man, this is our everyday second baseman, even though he's a shortstop. He signed for $3.25 million with the Rockies, joining Kyle Farmer as a potential everyday second baseman for the Rockies. We'll see what happens there. Nationals win the draft lottery. We'll get back to more on like draft picks and Rule 5 stuff later. Mookie Betts, as I mentioned, they announced weeks back that he's moving back to the infield. They announced again, this guy in his 30s is going to be the everyday shortstop, and he's not going to play the outfield. What are you doing? I think Miguel Rojas and Gavin Lux and Tommy Edman and Chris Taylor and Kiki Hernandez can handle the shortstop second base stop positions because that's what they all are. They're infielders. Rojas is a really good offensive player, okay? And you're just going to get Mookie Betts hurt. Aaron Judge, they announced the Yankees. And the flip side, a good move is he's moving to right field full-time. So with Alex Verdugo and Juan Soto leaving in free agency, the best idea for the Yankees is to keep Judge fresh and healthy by having him play right field. Because the guy that tall, like 6'8", 6'9", that big, like a tight end, he is your best asset. You got to keep him healthy, and he's not a center fielder. Playing Trent Grisham, a two-time Gold Glove winner in center field, or rookie or the youngster top prospectors Dominguez in center field, is just a better thing for your team. It really, really is. So those make sense. Max Fried, though, speaking of the Yankees, signed an 8-year, $218 million deal. He pitched really well for Atlanta when he was healthy. He's a very good pitcher, so he's joining Garrett Cole and Carlos Rodon in that tier of the rotation. Marcus Stroman's still on the roster, and they have Rookie of the Year, Luis Hill, probably should have won it. But on that paper, you're like, they got Clark Schmidt, Nestor Cortez. When this happened the other day, you're like, the Yankees are building good rotation because they can't stand that they lost the World Series, even though, again, they had the better team and the better pitching staff on paper. And Nathan Eovaldi's thing in Texas on a 3-year, $75 million deal. He's thinking to himself that if Max Scherzer's healthy and Jacob deGrom is healthy, that's a good rotation. That's what he's thinking. The biggest signing is the Mets signed Juan Soto to a 15-year, $765 million deal. If they void his option towards the end, it gets $805 million. I'm a Mets fan. It's my secondary team. But I'm not thinking to myself, like, you know what? The Mets really needed Soto. What I felt like the Mets what they need is pitching, because I mentioned 3 starting pitchers leaving in free agency. And no offense to McGill and Peterson. McGill and Peterson, they're both 5th starters. And Blackburn is coming off major injury, and so does Kota Sengai. So Montas and Clay Holmes are not the guys I would have spent my money on, and maybe got a very good 8th inning because the Mets' 8th inning has been an issue. I also would have looked at, is there a good outfielder on the market that can play center field? Is there someone on the market who can play right field? Because Juan Soto is not a right fielder, and the Mets are not just going to go put Juan Soto in left field and move Nimmo back to center field and play Starling Marte in right field. I would do that. Marte, even at his age, is probably a much better defensive right fielder because someone had a montage of, the Mets are going to pay for this guy, and they show all the terrible plays he made in the outfield. I've seen him make terrible plays when he's in Washington and in San Diego, but immediately a lineup of him and Lindor, which the Mets will probably be dumb enough to keep Lindor in the leadoff spot and put Soto second, and then the rest of the lineup is just terrible when it should be Soto is third and Lindor is cleanup. This may signal that Alonso's gone, which is fine. If Vientos continues to play how he did in the playoffs as your first baseman and Beatty has anything left, or they sign a veteran third baseman, maybe. Because we know Francisco Alvarez is a good offensive player, and Nimmo should be batting the leadoff spot because he is a leadoff hitter, and Jeff McNeil maybe will rebound from his injury. Now, the Mets lineup is just got better than it was. I'm still a question about spending all this money on a guy. I know he's not 32 years old and he's still in his 20s, but 15 years is a very, very long time. And I don't know if the Mets win free agency because, again, I don't think this is going to translate to win a World Series. The Yankees got to the World Series because they had a good pitching staff this year, and they had all-stars on their team. So that's the big move there. And some other big moves are that that Jake Berger got traded to Texas for Max Acosta, Yasser Vargas, and Brian Mendoza. I'm surprised that Texas did this because Nathaniel Lowe has been a Gold Glove, Silver Slugger, All-Star caliber player. I don't know if he's all three in his mantle, but he's been good. And Young is supposed to be this really talented player. Well, as I mentioned earlier, he hasn't been healthy. Nathaniel Lowe also battled some injuries last year, and Texas is thinking that if they put Jake Berger at DH, they can slide over Evan Carter to center field, and Wyatt Langford can play left field. Because last year, I remember seeing Evan Carter playing center field. So if you play the two youngsters with Adolis Garcia, that pushes that Tavares guy to the bench, I think his name is, because he can't hit. I know he can field, but if Evan Carter and Wyatt Langford are above average in center field and left field, or even average with Adolis Garcia, that's a really good outfield. And Jake Berger's your DH is probably one of the best DHs in baseball. The Marlins played him a lot at first base when he's not a first baseman. And it's just the Marlins, you won that trade with the White Sox. No matter if the pitcher you gave the White Sox is healthy and ever pitches well for the White Sox, you won that trade. But the Marlins are just continuing to be like, oh no, we got to trade everybody off our team and we got to suck. We got to fire broadcasters, fire whole entire coaching staffs. I don't know what they're doing there, but the Rangers win that trade no matter what they gave back to Miami. Stephen Cohen, in order to pay for Juan Soto, apparently sold both the Triple A team and the High A team to a group that already owns a bunch of minor league teams, but it's still going to be the same people running it. The Mets, though, also announced David Wright will get his number 5 retired. Marlins hired Derek Shaman to be their assistant hitting coach. And then there were some trades that happened. So the first trade that happened was Anderson Menace was traded. I will get to that in a moment because there's a lot of moving pieces to that trade, okay? With Anderson Menace being traded to the Blue Jays, someone went with him, someone went along, but the Guardians at the time acquired Spencer Horwitz. Doesn't matter what prospect they got or who went along with him. I'll get that in a moment. But they traded for Spencer Horwitz, who made the second Topps All-Rookie team. And instead of the Blue Jays playing him in left field where he has more career innings, they were playing him at second base. Then eventually they moved him to first base or DH, and he was playing really well and he's clutch for them. Cleveland, I didn't understand why they wanted Spencer Horwitz in this trade because Josh Naylor is their first baseman, right? Bo Naylor, I don't know if he can field, so he may become a first baseman DH. Manzardo was the youngster. David Fry made the All-Star team. So what that equal up to you is a lot of first baseman DHs. Doesn't make any sense. But Cleveland was smart. They're like, we're going to flip this guy to Pittsburgh for the young pitcher Luis Ortiz, who's been a little bit injured and inconsistent with Pittsburgh, and then guys like Josh Hartle and Mike Kennedy. So Cleveland gets themselves 3 prospects from Pittsburgh, 1 from Toronto. But I still don't understand why you trade Anderson Menace. I can tell you, break down the trade in a moment, more what they traded for him and what they got, outside of Spencer Horwitz, is Anderson Menace was your all-star. I was saying, and a Gold Glove winner. I've been saying, man, he should play shortstop, and they should just sign a veteran second baseman the last 2 seasons. Rocchio emerged as a Gold Glove caliber shortstop, pretty clutch for them at the bottom of the lineup. So why would you, trade one of your best players? Steven Kwan and Jose Ramirez and Josh Naylor are probably their 3 best players. But Jimenez is right there as the 4th best player. So I don't understand trading him, even if you get 3 prospects. You just made it to the ALCS. Why trade one of your 4 best players? That's where that makes absolutely no sense there that you're going to do that. Now, another trade is the White Sox trade Garrett Crochet to the Red Sox for a catcher named Kyle Teal, outfielder Braden Montgomery, infielders Chase Miradolf, and right-handed pitcher Wickman Gonzalez. First things first, White Sox have a gluttony of pitchers from their own development farm system or from trades they made. So why get more pitchers? An infielder, cool. The White Sox don't have no idea who's going to play their whole entire infield, like after Andrew Vaughn. Getting an outfielder, cool. What happened last year when they got outfielders? They ended up signing all these old guys this year, and they're paying Benintendi all this money, and Robert can't stay healthy. And they got a catcher when literally they have a catching prospect who's ready to come up, and the White Sox were terrible last year at catcher. Corey Lee was pretty good. It was probably the best catching they've had in a while. But again, I can root for Garrett Crochet. He's now on the Red Sox. He's following the Chris Sale trade. But hopefully none of these guys have the same hype that Moncada had, where Moncada never developed. That's all I'm just saying to myself. Michael Kopech, love the guy. He's really talented, but the White Sox development staff didn't develop him. So the White Sox were in a rush to trade him because they didn't want to extend him. They didn't want to just keep him because they're like, oh, we're so bad. And by the time that Garrett Crochet becomes a free agent and we want to keep him, he's going to cost a lot of money. We're not going to be competitive. And instead of, asking for Willer Abreu, as I mentioned earlier, who is a Gold Glove right fielder, why didn't you just get someone right now? And the other big trade is Devin Williams got traded to the Yankees for Nets Cortez and Caleb Durbin. Well, The Yankees lose Clay Holmes, the guy who used to be their closer, and they made Luke Weaver the closer, but that's not enough. They're like, we lost the World Series. We're getting Devin Williams to be our closer, and even though we got to give up Nestor Cortez, we just signed Max Fried and Marcus Stroman and Clark Schmidt on the roster, so we could afford to lose them and one infield prospect. So I find that interesting that they go out and get themselves one of the best closers on the market, even though he missed half the season due to a back injury, because at the same time, he's one of the best closers in baseball. You're going to have a lockdown closer, and you now have Max Fried in rotation. Nestor Cortez battled injury last year, and it wasn't his fault that he gave up that grand slam. It's the manager's fault. But either way, it's just the Yankees are like, we lose Juan Soto, but we're going to get an all-star closer and an all-star, and we sign Max Fried with all that money. The Yankees may have to figure out if Dominguez is the guy or not, what they're going to do at third base, because Jazz Chisholm is going to play second. Now let's get to some other news this year. Rest in peace to Merv Redelman, the outfielder passed away of 81, the 271 lifetime average, 66 home runs, 329 RBI. He played for the Orioles, Reds, Pirates, and Angels, and then coached for the Rangers, A's, Padres, Braves, Tigers, and Padres. Again, he won 3 World Series in 1970 with the Baltimore Orioles, 1975 with the Reds, and 1989 with the A's. So when it's all said and done with, he can say I was on World Series teams, pennants teams, and I went into coaching, so I lived a long life. So rest in peace to him. Rest in peace to Rocky Calavito. He passed away at age of 91. He finished with 374 home runs and 1,159 RBIs and 2.6 average. He was one of the premier sluggers, all-star players who played for Cleveland mostly, then Detroit, Kansas City, A's, Indians again, White Sox, Dodgers, and Yankees. Coached for Cleveland and Kansas City. He made 9 all-star teams. Led the league in home runs one year, RBIs a different year, and it hit 4 home runs in a game. Is in the Guardians Hall of Fame. You know, that's a pretty good career when you have over 300 home runs and over 1,100 RBIs. Like, he was a great player, and he lived a long life to 91, and then even went into coaching afterwards. So, it said he died of complications of diabetes at home. Man, Rocky Calavito was an all-star, and some people are like, maybe he's a Hall of Famer. No. But yeah, rest in peace to Merv Redelman and Rocky Calavito. And then Andres Gimenez's specific trait is that Cleveland gave up a controllable young pitcher in his late 20s with Gimenez for, I mentioned, Horowitz and some player named Mitchell. So essentially they're like, well, we get 1 player from Toronto and we're getting 3 from Pittsburgh. But we give up Gimenez, one of our 4 best players, and Nick Stanley was a crucial part. So it makes no sense. Speaking of them, as we talked about their coaching staff, they revealed that 7 people were promoted to new jobs. So Craig Alvarez is promoted from bench coach to associate manager. Grant Flink is going to be promoted from minor league hitting coordinator to the major league hitting coach. Jason Esposito is from run production coordinator to the assistant hitting coach. And Kai Correa promoted from major league field coordinator to major league field coordinator and director of defense, base running, and game strategy. So there's that. Cubs, as I mentioned, added that Javier guy. So they've announced that former Major League coordinator Mark Stoudemire will take over from Darren Holmes as bullpen coach. So I guess Darren Holmes is not lasting. I don't know if they just hire him. And AJ Levis has come abroad as a staff assistant. So obviously Flaherty is still the bench coach. Hadavi is still the pitching coach. Dustin Kelly is the hitting coach. That is new. What? I don't think he was the hitting coach last year. I'm a former Tiger guy. Juan Cabrera is the assistant hitting coach. John Malley is another assistant hitting coach. He's been around the block. Jonathan Mota is a major league coach, and Alex Smith is a major league strategy coach. So, and then obviously promoted from with Kevin Poppy will be the major league strength coach. Mark Weisman will be the assistant major league strength coach. So look out for that. Padres coaching staff announced that Brian Esposito has been named bench coach. They didn't have one last year. And Ruben Niella and Victor Rodriguez are pitching and hitting coach. Third base infield coach is Tim Leapier. First base outfield coach is David Macy. Assistant hitting coaches are Pat O'Sullivan, and Mike McCoy. And the game planning strategist is Pat Somerville. Bullpen catcher Roberto Arane. And the coaching assistant is Morgan Burkhart. And Ryan Barbara is no longer on the staff. Now, the Rule 5 draft went like this. The White Sox had the number 1 pick, so they took the Shane Smith. Rockies said, never mind. Marlins took Liam Hicks. Angels took Garrett McDaniels. A's took Noah Murdoch. Nationals took Evan Ryder. Blue Jays took Angel Bastardo. Those are pitchers. Pirates passed. Reds took second baseman Cooper Bowman. Rangers and Giants passed. Rays took Nate Lavenger. Red Sox passed. Twins took pitcher Everson Castellanos. Cardinals passed. Cubs took Greg Workman. Both Mariners, Royals, Tigers, Astros, Mets, D-backs passed. Braves took a pitcher Anderson Pilar. Orioles, Guardians passed. Padres took Juan Nunez. Brewers took Connor Thomas. These are pitchers. Yankees passed. Phillies took Mike Vail, but then obviously we mentioned he was traded. Dodgers passed second round. Everyone passed, but the Braves took a shortstop. Also, the minor league one also happened, but those players do not go onto the team 20-man roster. So there's that. And then the last news is a great baseball news is that the Veterans Committee did what they're supposed to do, is vote for guys that were overlooked and that should have got in. And Dave Parker, the longtime Major League outfielder for Pittsburgh mostly, and Dick Allen of the Phillies and the White Sox, the outfielder, first baseman, third baseman, DH, have got in. And they definitely deserved it. And there were 3 guys on that ballot: Tommy John, Dave Parker, and Dick Allen. All deserved to have been on that. And Dave Parker is an MVP, a 7-time All-Star, 3-time Silver Slugger and Gold Glover, 2-time batting champ, All-Star Game MVP, won a home run derby, and won 2 World Series. So it wasn't like, oh my God, he's an offensive player. No, he won the same amount of Gold Gloves as Silver Slugger and was the best player, one of the best players 7 times. He led the league in hitting once. He led the league in doubles twice. Led the league in RBIs once. You know, his WAR one year was the best. He had led the league in slugging twice, OPS once, OPS plus once. Total bases like 3 or 4 times. Like, this dude was considered one of the 2 best players in the league. Like, on average, he hit 22 homers and drove in 98. There's a reason why, when it's all said and done, is he doesn't have 500 or 1,500. But he's at 1,493. He's just below the threshold of most of the bottom line of like, okay, if you have 1,500 RBIs, you're a Hall of Famer. And he has almost a lifetime 300 batting average, which they love to put guys in the Hall of Fame for that, and 2,700 hits. Like, again, if he battled some injuries and wasn't always the same player, but he's pretty close on everything. And then Dick Allen has also almost lifetime 300 batting average. He has only 1,100 RBIs and 351 home runs and only 1,800 hits. But the problem is, I've mentioned this, when you play third base in the outfield, and you're not a third baseman or an outfielder, and the National League then didn't have a DH, and you're first base and DH, like, it's hard to put up those numbers. He was an MVP, Rookie of the Year. He made 7 All-Star teams. He also led the league in RBIs once, triples twice, runs once. It was the leader in WAR once, OPB twice, slugging 3 times, OPS 4 times, OPS plus 3 times, and total bases once. Like, for that, there was that point from the age, I think, 23 season, his age 23 season, or the age 22 season, through his age, like, 32. For, like, that 10-year period, he was, if not one of the best, the best. But, again, injuries played a factor into that, and it's finally that guys got in. But, of course, fortunately, they put guys in when they're dead. You need 12 votes for election. Dave Parker got 14. Dick Allen got 13. Tommy John was the closest with 7. He should be in eventually. No offense to Ken Boyer, this John Donaldson guy, Vic Harris, or Louis Tiant, or Steve Garvey. But none of those guys scream Hall of Fame. So again, thanks for listening to another edition of MLB Observations. Week 6 of the Hot Stove edition of ending 2024 through 25 this season. Friday Table Lock on Radar. Rest in peace to everyone who passed away. See you guys next time.